Perfect. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Hello,
Perfect.
everybody. Hi, Kimia.
Hi, Asha. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Today we're talking about resistance to setting big wealth and business goals. Such an exciting topic.
Yeah, it is, and very personal for me.
Yes, 100%. Why is it? Well, we thought we'd introduce each other first of all. So, how about you tell we are streaming on multiple places: YouTube, my personal Facebook page, and LinkedIn right now on my end, and our Instagram. So, for those of you who are watching on my end, please meet Afsha. Afsha, tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Afsha, CEO of Wealthverse. We are a boutique Canadian firm that offers a plethora of services. We do everything from assets under management and active management to 4-fee only services like retirement, estate, and advanced strategy planning.
Yes, excellent. And I'm Kinya Romanovska. I'm the CEO at Pros and Babes, and we help engineers, parents, leaders, and creators engineer a better mother and family-friendly infrastructure for the future. And if that was a mouthful, we are an e-learning company that specializes in helping engineers and other STEM professionals in the decade around their childbearing years to preserve their career capital, their wealth capital, and their overall quality of life. And we work with partners like Afsha at Wealthverse to provide specialized training so that we can really, crush the financial and motherhood penalty that women can experience when they have kids while juggling a difficult career, right?
And that's how Kenya and I actually started working together. She has this incredible program called the Mom BA, and I come in and give insight on the financial areas that women are uniquely affected by, and especially mothers who are an area that a group that's not advocated for. So today we're here to talk to you about resistance in both wealth and business. So let's talk about why we chose this topic.
Yeah. Well, last week before we did our first video together, I was telling you about emotional freedom techniques. So like this tapping, right? I was doing this tapping that we do with many of my clients, and it's extremely effective. People have used this. What for some people, if you're listening to the first time, it might feel strange. You might like, what is this, weird stuff? But a lot of engineers have used this technique to overcome anxiety, and we particularly tap around wealth and financial goals. And to back up a little bit, one day I was sitting in a workshop and I realized that I was scared of making more money. Literally, I was scared. Like I equated making more money with having more problems in my life, right? More costs to manage, more employees, more infrastructure. And when I started digging deeper into why I was afraid of that, I went into my past and realized my family comes from a communist country where there were successful professionals. My grandparents were dentists, they owned property. And one day invaders came and took it all away overnight like that. So there's a memory in my body that thinks it's not safe to make more money. You make a lot of sacrifice and then somebody can come and take it all away. So that's the story as to how I started exploring the topic of resistance to having more money. There are some things in the background of our minds that make us think maybe making more money is actually not safe to me. And that's my story. What about you, Afsha? Why is this a topic that's up close and personal for you?
I think, number one thing is like a fear of failure. I think people, including myself, are afraid of being able to actually achieve their goals or not being able to achieve their goals, right? So it can lead to a lot of frustration and disappointment. It can stop you from wanting to continue and go further. So sometimes we try to set goals that are more reasonable, which I'm learning I really don't like that word, because what is reasonable, right? So I think fear of failure is a huge one where you're like, I'd rather just not try because I don't want to fail. It's easier to just set something smaller that I know I can do. But we obviously can see even as we share how limiting that can be. Another one is like another thing for resistance is lack of confidence, right? The person who dared to set that goal, who said they were going to do it, who went out there and was bold and said, I'm going to do it, that takes a lot of confidence, and I don't think that all of us are really raised with that, to just be like, well, how far do you think you can go? It's more so do the safe thing, go to university, get a job, earn an income. Those are the safe things. We're not challenged to set, bigger goals that are outside, at least not, myself growing up. So I think resistance is a very personal one because I deal with it all the time.
Yes. Yes, it's interesting that you mentioned that. Yesterday in the Mombi program, we are right now in Parenting and Family Life Month. So all of us are reflecting on what it means to be a successful parent. And we have this one-page summary that I keep glued on my door somewhere to when I doubt myself as a parent. I have defined, well, what does successful parenting look like? And many of us, we talk about, we weren't taught to fail. Many of us were A+ students in school. We were valued and loved for our performance, good grades. Like that's how to our parents were like, you're a good girl, you're gonna succeed, right? Get those good grades, go to school. But then I remember that when I did fail, and like as an entrepreneur, that's the only way. I mean, you have to learn and fail and try things and test them. And now I'm comfortable with quote unquote failure. Like, totally, I know it's part of the game. But the first times, I still remember the first time I failed a math test. After I remember where I was sitting in high school, like the panic, the dread associated with failing a math test. And then later on, when I was doing a super competitive program in college where I had the blank page syndrome, the dread. So I did not learn to fail growing up. I only learned to succeed at school. And I was also good at sports and other volunteer things. But I had no memory of failing in my body and then feeling safe about it. So that fear of failure and setting big goals, I think, is a huge piece. Until you acknowledge it, you will be stuck and limits and a ceiling to what you can do and what you can achieve.
I was just reading the other day about how you say that this girl was actually raised where she would come home and her father would ask specifically, what is it that you failed at today? Didn't want to know what they succeeded at, not what they did well at, but what did you fail at today? And he would almost be disappointed if they didn't have something they failed at, is what she said.
I love that. I have to write that down.
I'm like, just imagine how powerful that would be to be raised with that mindset of, wait, they're looking for something I failed at. That's the true essence of seeing failure as learning. Because we can say that failure is learning over and over again, but if we don't actually believe it and feel that it was learning, it still feels like failure.
This is such a powerful question. Such a powerful question. How did you fail today? That's really important because I often ask my kids, what are you proud of? And then yesterday I was actually debriefing a situation with my son. We were snowboarding. He was at a snowboarding lesson, and then him and another girl got into a snow fight, and it turned ugly. And I was a little bit shocked, right? So we were, and I had to give it the benefit of the doubt. I wasn't there. When we debriefed in the car, I was really proud of him because he actually accepted to say sorry first, which is a big deal for a 5-year-old kid to, even when they felt wrong. But I asked him, well, how could you do things better next time? And I think the question of how did you fail today is just a very nice addition to that. It can help with our kids with the right mindset to teach them entrepreneurial skills.
And the second part is your reaction. It's not necessarily what we ask them, it's your reaction to it. Like they watch how we react to things faster than anything that we say. And that was the thing that she said. She always remembered his disappointment if she hadn't failed at something. That was the one that struck with me the most, because people can say, great, you failed, but if you sound disappointed or you're not celebrating it as a learning curve, then it's, again, still a failure, right?
So interesting. This is going to stick with me. Thank you for that insight. So maybe we can talk about how I've seen women evolve in terms of setting wealth goals. When I kicked off the Mombi program about 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, one of the things we do is a 25-year vision for a family, and it's a high-end one. It's not extremely specific in terms of what you will achieve in life. It puts things in perspective for the different areas of your life, but there is a section that says my net worth will be. Initially, when we started working together with this group of women, there was an enormous resistance in terms of writing down a number.
And I remember this.
Right? So tell me what you observed.
I think in the beginning, $1 million was a lot. And I know when we look online, right, and people realize, my clients know $1 million is not enough now with inflation. But I remember the women in the group thinking $1 million was a lot. And that evolved to, in our 3rd year together, being like, what do you think you can retire? Do you think 10 million is a lot to retire with or achievable? And almost everyone said yes.
Yeah.
That's 10x, right? They went from 1 million to knowing or believing that they could have 10 million.
So let's pause for a moment. to think about the implications of that. You and I both love talking about mindset. Imagine somebody's life trajectory who never stops. They just think, can I get to 1 million? No, that even feels impossible. Versus somebody whose thought pattern is interrupted and encouraged to write down that goal.
Mm-hmm.
For many women, and I have that in my accountability form every month, like check off the box. Have you written down how much money you want in your bank account? Some people leave that blank for months and months and months and months until I'm like, beep, 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 beep. Okay, wealth month is coming up. What are you going to do about that? Why is it so uncomfortable for you? And many women that I work with are STEM professionals. They're very conscious. They have that idea of, I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to take more than I need, all of that. And so it's just a very interesting discussion for them to understand wealth as a flow of money. It's not something static that you hoard in your bank account. It's in a way for you to influence the world.
Yeah.
And this ties into the book I'm reading, Why We Avoid Setting Big Goals. So typically small business owners work hard setting and achieving all sorts of goals in their business every day for product quality, manufacturing efficiency, or satisfied customers. But they often don't set concrete income goals. If you don't set specific goals, start to do it so you can transition from your old paradigm to a new wealth reality. Why do you think so many, have you observed that too in other spheres other than with the moms that we work with, people resisting setting concrete income or wealth goals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're able to process like, okay, out of what I make, I know I can save and invest this. They're willing to do that. But setting an income goal, because it's a direct reflection of what you think you can provide. Like, what is your skill set? Can I actually earn a higher income? That's a direct reflection on your capabilities. So it's a lot harder. Any resistance that's going to show up is going to show up in the conversation of making more money. Do I deserve it? Am I being greedy? Is this too much?
Okay. So what happens then when you come into a conversation like that with someone who thinks that they have a capped salary potential or income potential? And I was having a conversation with a client yesterday. She had her, cash flow plan and her different stages and seasons of life. And then she wrote salary topped out. I'm like, let's look at that. Like, let's explore that, right? Like in this season of life. And it was a good salary. It's nothing to sneer at. And I'm like,
I don't mean in a sneer way. I mean the concept of writing down. It's like a set, firm belief that you're tapped out, which in any case, by the way, it doesn't matter what profession you're in. It's not about that profession. Your salary, your income is never tapped out. There are multiple ways to earn income. That's where my reaction came from. It's it's not possible for you to be capped out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so that's why, she was very open-minded, and I asked her to be curious. Are you making it a self-fulfilling prophecy by writing it down? And of course, that was all part of embracing imperfect action, doing a first draft. And so I had a chance to look at where her mindset was at and then encourage her to start adjusting things, right? And circling things in her plan and saying, okay, well, this is my mindset around this, but am I missing something? And of course, she was very open to it and said, yes, absolutely. I can totally rethink that, right?
Yeah. And I don't always, so when I get that conversation, I don't always get to the point where I want them to feel like they have to make more. I really get clear on their lifestyle and their goals, right? So like, what do you actually need, right? It's not about needing to make more, but if you need to make more in order to set your goal, like defining the type of lifestyle you want is the absolute number one thing. There are people who I've met where I've reviewed their portfolio and I'm like, you have enough. You don't actually need to save more. You can now coast and you're good based on the type of lifestyle that you want to lead. So I think if you get clear and almost, I want to say selfish with understanding like yourself and your own goals, then you're going to start to be able to explore, okay, maybe I don't make enough to be able to do this. Like first understand what you need. Some people only need to draw 2,000 to 4,000 a month. Some people are like 10 to 15 and I'll make it work. So it just depends on your lifestyle and what you're used to. And then you can work backwards and say, okay, but how much do I need to make? Because the goal isn't always more. The goal is enough where you can live a good quality of life, however that shows up for you.
Yeah. I like to take it a step further and think of impact and legacy and thinking beyond yourself, what whether through your investments or your buying choices or your lifestyle choices, you are building the earth for the next generation, for your kids. And as mothers, that becomes very clear to us that we're not just here for our needs, our lifestyle, but we're paving the way for our kids. And I will say, I mean, I have two sons, but especially for mothers, we're very keenly aware of what our daughters can be experiencing, right? And the rights and how we experience the workforce is a direct reflection of the efforts the previous generations made to make sure we have maternity leave in Canada. Whenever I talk to people in the United States, they're like, you get 12 months in Canada? That's crazy. I wish I had that, right? So it's easy to take that for granted and think that, well, we're entitled to it. In reality, there's the women in the previous generations and some men, I suppose, I mean, must have been supportive men who set that up. So what are we doing today in terms of how do we perceive wealth, not just in terms of our own lifestyle goals, but for the multi-generational legacy that we will leave behind? And I think working with women who are engineers, academics, they're so smart. They have so much potential to shape and influence the world. I like to make that part of the wealth conversation. You're not just building wealth for yourself, you are structuring the world for the next generation to come.
Especially with children. Yeah, especially with children. People are thinking the thing that they're taught is like, save for your education. And they don't really think beyond that there's so many other things you could be giving your child for experiences. And you want to decide what you want to be able to give them in your lifetime and what's left behind. Because there's a lot of people who had a starting point that were way ahead of us, right? Just based on what their parents set up for them. So you can really structure your plan to include your best life, your quality of life, and making sure with taxes and everything, you're deciding what flows through to them, while you're living and afterwards. I think the thing that I see the most with, my clients who have figured out their quality of life, the thing that they are doing is they're asking, especially with my women, clients. It's like they're finally asking for the raise. That's all they did. It's a small step, but it was huge for their mindset to even get there, to say, who am I to ask for this increase? Especially when they're taking mat leave or having children, they feel like they're not inputting enough and they're not part of it as much. So who am I to ask for that? But it's based on your tenure, what you're bringing to the table, how much you're balancing. There are so many employers that will give you more work and promote you, but then the salary or the income is the same. So that's one of the things I've noticed is those small changes where a woman's like, yeah, I actually got a $10,000 increase. Because I track their income going up over the, let's say, next 10 years. I'm like, does it go up with inflation or do you feel like it'll go up more than that? And what does your profession say your salary is capped at? And a lot of the times, the ones where they have the most growth, it's like, well, no, because I'm going to ask for more. Yes. And that could be with salary increases. That could be with a Friday off. It could be with, I need to have flexibility on my hours. So those are the things that I think that are the least resistance with when our clients are growing, is that they're starting to ask for things.
Yes. I had one client whose pay went up by 40%, going down to 4 days a week. And she said she did so much tapping before asking her boss and preparing for the conversation. So again, that's the emotional freedom technique that I was talking about, tapping on those acupressure points. We can do a little demonstration towards the end if people are interested. I just put some of my makeup on my forehead. That's funny. So she did a lot of tapping because a lot of anxiety came up. So when you think about asking for a raise, for many people, it makes them want to throw up when they're thinking about what they would like to ask for. The fear of rejection, and then doing it over and over again. One of our guest speakers said, you should be asking for a raise every 2 years. And for some people, it's like, yep, I already do it. And in the last workshops I did, a lot of women were actually regularly asking for raises. So it was fantastic to hear from women that they're more comfortable doing that. I think we are breaking ground there. You're right, asking.
Mm-hmm. And you can even turn that into entrepreneurship. So that's with, when you need an employer to raise your salary. But let's talk about us and other entrepreneurs that are listening to this. I mean, how do you raise your prices? What's your rate sheet? How do you decide the value that you're bringing? Are your prices going up over time? Not just because of inflation and the cost of things going up over time, but what about your skill set? your experience. I mean, think about how many times you and I have talked about the amount of professional development that we have worked on, how much we've invested in ourselves. Your cost and what you offer should reflect that. But how many entrepreneurs are actually doing it, right? How many are going to go and reevaluate their services and say, you know what? Yeah, when I started in my first 5 years, this is what I charged. By my 10th year, this is what I need to charge. And I think that's part of how we came up with this live topic. Was like, okay, we're sensing some resistance. You know, what does a $100,000 package look like? What does a $50,000 service look like? What does a $10,000 service look like? And I think many entrepreneurs listening to this are going to be like, yes, I felt similarly. I didn't know what my hourly rate should be, or I didn't know if I could actually get my package increase, even though part of the reason we're even thinking about it is because we're seeing the value that our clients and the people we're working with are getting, and that they're making so much more than what we're charging after working with us, right?
Yes, absolutely. Many people now understand the value of what's behind your here, right? Your mindset determines what you're going to build in your life, and what's running you, comfort and fear, or hope for a better future.
Mm-hmm.
Comfort or fear, or hope for a better future. We're wired to survive. We often act out of a place of fear of what's in the jungle. The tiger in the jungle could come and bite me. Many of us make decisions like that, and especially when we have kids, that tendency can increase. There's anxiety. Am I parenting well? Am I a good enough mother? We're sleep deprived. And so that's when you see a lot of women starting to shrink their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And instead of using this time of life as you've done something so expansive, you're keeping the human race alive. But there's still the mentality, it's so normal. Women have kids. It's the most natural thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hardest thing.
I think that word that you're talking about, it's back to value. It's what value do you think you're providing or bringing to the world, your workspace, your friendships? That's something that I definitely, had to learn, and I struggled with so much. Is like, well, what value do I provide? And other people might be like, that's crazy. You changed my life. Yes. Someone can say that to you, but do I actually feel it? What value am I providing? And then how do I overcome that? Once I understand my value, which is something that I'm come to terms with a lot more, I'd say in the last few years. And I've been doing this for 12 years in the finance industry, right? And only in the last, I'd say maybe 2 to 3 years have I really started to be like, wait a minute, I don't actually need that franchise to help me. I'm bringing in my clients. I'm providing this worth. That's how we were able to go more independent. I had to value the services that, we provide in order to give our clients the best and leave. And then just determining like your rates and how you're going to charge people. I think that's very similar to what's happening in your brain when you need to ask for a raise, or you want to ask for a bonus, or, vouch for yourself and what your input was in that project, for an example. I think when it all comes back to like resistance, it's like you start off with getting really deep and understanding like what value, your own value. And that's going to take self-confidence. That's going to take an increase in your self-esteem. That's going to take, self-care comes in the form of many things, and self-awareness, self-care, self-confidence, all of those things are needed in order to care for yourself. Once we start to understand our value, which I feel me and you are definitely at, right? With the work that we've done, we're starting to feel, but we've been feeling pretty confident in seeing how we can transform lives, the service that we provide, and how we give so honestly, endlessly to our community. What are some tangible things that we can give people in terms of like, now that, okay, if you feel like you have the value and you're doing something great, how do you now tackle some of that resistance when it shows up for you? Because it doesn't go away.
I will talk about tapping again, and lots of visualizations. Those are 2 tools I've used that have helped me. First, you really have to get clear on that value, right? Who's your audience, who benefits economically from what you do. And I think an easy exercise to do is imagine if you disappeared tomorrow, what would happen to the company, right? Like if you, that can be a starting point.
That's a really good one. Gives you perspective. They'd be like, they'd be screwed without me.
Right. But it's good to think about that. And like, what would have to happen for the company to be able to operate without you, replace you, train somebody. You have to understand your company's economics. Unfortunately, a lot of people, before they go to ask for a raise, they don't actually understand the financial economics of their employer and how the business makes money.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
you have to understand, look at your company's financial reports, which are the revenue bringing activities, which are the profit centers, and how do you contribute to that? So, if you're going to have a much stronger case. This is how I approach things in my learning service. I really help people think, what is your current state? What could your future state be? What is the cost of not doing anything? What is the return on investment of adopting the tools and mindset in the community? So that's how I think about the value. But in terms of, I've been doing a lot of tapping. We've been doing it sometimes daily with the Mambier community. So, I can say that we have these scripts. I love the approach of tapping because it allows you to acknowledge how you feel. Most of us feel a lot of anxiety about thinking about having more money, setting a big income goal. So let's say what we do is we think of an income goal that is nice, and then we multiply it by 4 and we measure like, how badly does that feel? So let's say somebody says $10,000 per month. We say, okay, what about $40,000? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much resistance do you have to that? And so people will be like, $40,000 a month, that feels impossible. And so we do a round of tapping. Like we will tap on and we talk through, like, it's impossible. I don't even know how I would do this. I need to make a to-do list. Like, there's no way in hell I could get that money, right? Yeah. And so there's that, and you do a couple of rounds of that, and then you watch your anxiety and resistance fall from, let's say, 10 to 3. And then we do a script that's really positive. And like, I'm open to having people, inspiration, and ideas on thinking about how I could bring different streams of income. So you're literally installing a new software on your brain. Instead of being on autopilot and having the inner critic and the skeptic always saying, that's not possible, it's not doable. Well, if that's what you believe, you're never going to take any action towards what needs to happen. But if you actually, the part that we often don't acknowledge is, yes, we do have these anxieties, we do have these fears, we have history, we have ways that parents taught us to think about money, our culture. So if you don't look at that stuff and if you don't clear it, there's no point in trying to shove another software of possibility on top. And that's why tapping is so effective, is because it clears. It's kind of like you're upgrading from Windows XP to what's the current version. Actually, I don't run on, but you're trying to run like Windows 2 in your brain, but you should be running on Windows 10 if that exists today. And you can just kind of keep half of it and then try to install the other one. No, you have to remove the old software and put the new software. So tapping, and then I like to do visualizations. There's one with Vishen Lakiani that it's like a 6-step visualization. It starts with gratitude and clarity on your perfect day and clarity on like your 3-year goal. And that can really accelerate how much faster you can get somewhere. So those are 2 practices I've used regularly that have truly shortened the window in which I achieve some of my goals.
Right.
Both financially and other.
One thing that you said that stood out for me is, so it sounds like once you start to actually tap into your mindset, understand that this is possible, you talked about the system and learning how it works. So for example, with an employer, you're understanding that you have to understand how the system works. Like, how are they bringing in money, right? As soon as you start to understand how the process works, how revenue is brought in, and you go to them to see how you can bring to that bottom line, you're essentially speaking their language, right? And so the first step that stands out to me there is that you're getting curious about the process and how this thing works. You're not just going in and demanding that you get a raise. You're saying, hey, look, these are the things I provide, and here's what I can do or what I am doing in order to get to your bottom line. If you're bringing in more money, they're not going to say no. You just have to speak their language. The same thing happens with my clients in our sessions with, retirement estate planning. As soon as you explain to them how different vehicles work, a lot of people come to me thinking that they're going to have to earn more money in order to achieve their goals, but really it's the right strategies. So a lot of our sessions are educational, and it's the same thing, that you start to understand the process. How does the financial system work? How do we get taxed? And are there ways to get some of that back? Is it a good thing to get a big tax return? When you start to get curious and learn and understand how things work, you can figure out what areas to focus on to then achieve those goals, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are coming to the end of our session today. What are your key wrap up tips or, key points that you would like people to walk away with from today's conversation?
I mean, we came up with this conversation because this is not just for everyone we work with, it's for ourselves as well. What is the resistance coming from hitting those big wealth goals? I'll give one example that was personal and summarize with what I would do and leave people with. I remember a time where writing down 12 million at the top of my notepad as a goal for bringing in business was just so out there. It was that big, hairy, audacious goal. How dare I write it? Now it's something that I would write easily and I know I can accomplish it. But when I go back and I think about how did I achieve that, it was the simplest thing. It was starting so small. I'm such a big advocate for taking baby steps. Like, I took 12 million, I worked backwards and said, what do I need to do per month? And then once I could understand and process that, it was so much more digestible. Like, I can do the per month, but what does that per month look like? Well, I had to break it down per week. And then when I looked at it per week, I went down to what do I have to do daily? Now, I didn't track it daily because that would drive me bonkers. There's too much that happens in a day. And then if I'm stressing about, did I hit the goal? It's not going to work. So what worked for me was every Friday I did a check-in. And it's not, did I fail or succeed? It wasn't that, because you're going to have weeks where you just simply don't. You have to expect that. Yes. What I did was I said, am I ahead or am I behind? If I'm behind, I know, okay, give it a little bit more next week. We can do this. Go focus on that one deal that you knew you were landing or that one client you could provide value to. If I was ahead, then I had to give myself a break. I couldn't run around in a frenzy every single week. And that's what happens is when we have these big goals, we just think every single day you need to come forward. No, but when you get really clear with your goal and you come down to what you need to be achieving weekly, you can give yourself time to relax and have a break. So the moral of that entire story is I will never shy away from a big goal anymore, because I don't think about the big goal once I set it. If I was thinking 12 million, I would just be overwhelmed every single day. Right. I thought about my weekly goal. And then that was so much more tangible. So I'm such an advocate for small steps that get you to that big one, but don't be afraid of setting that big goal and then working your way backwards.
Yeah. It's similar for me. I will say as a mother, I have to be a lot more flexible with myself in terms of the type of life I want to create. So I've written all sorts of different goals with from a growth perspective and net perspective, because my business model is different, right? And I realized that in this season of my life with my kids, I'm calibrating between the time I want to spend going deep and getting real traction in my business and sales, and also having a lot of spaciousness for time with my kids, and growing a business to the size I would like to probably eventually requires hiring people. And I'm at peace with not going as fast as I thought I would. I have so many of the foundations in my life that really matter to me, where I feel like we're living an amazing lifestyle with my family. And I don't consider myself like on paper, there are people who earn so much more money than me. But I've structured my life for last year. I took 2 months away by the sea with my kids and my husband. I'm not waiting until I'm 65 to do it. And I did put some money away, and I did take care of my health, and I invested in my skills. And so I have so much freedom to design my life, which can be scary, right? But I like to look at it from a really holistic perspective. So I set goals in all areas, and then it's a question of calibrating how fast do I want to get there, and how many will I work on at the same time and prioritize. So same as you, I do a lot of writing down in terms of a specific goals perspective, but also my desires and how I want to feel on the journey. And that really matters. It doesn't matter to me if I get to, the millions and I feel terrible in the process. Life is too short for me for that. I'm finding a way always. What do I want to achieve? How I want to feel? And then there's a dance all the time. And that's how I get that's how I get to reaching my goals.
And this, that how we make sure that you're acknowledging those things. And I say this to every one of my clients is you're celebrating your progress. Yes. So actually one of the ways to tackle resistance to having big goals is when you make those small steps along the way, you're celebrating your progress. Everything that Kenya just mentioned, the time away with her family, the flexibility to choose, all of those things were not things that you had before. And that is so, that's so, in the last live, you shared that you hit your weight goal. Like these are things that are progress. And I really encourage every single client, like any of my clients listening to this in the last few weeks are going to laugh because they've heard me say this. I'm like, okay, so you hit this. What are you doing to celebrate this? And they just sit there awkwardly like, you're supposed to tell us what to do with our money, not our life. I'm like, no, I'm going to follow up. It needs to be, I don't care if you went on a vacation and you labeled it celebrating this, you wrote it in the sand, you cheers to it and said it out loud, but the thing you're celebrating has to be said, written down somewhere, and that needs to be in form of a celebration. Because if you don't, the human brain will process that it didn't happen.
That is so key. It is so key. Why are we making money? To have a certain lifestyle. And for many of us to have a sense of safety. How do I define wealth? To me, it's feeling safe no matter what. Whether I have X in my bank account or way more, I want to feel safe in my body. And wealth for me too is to know that I can provide value and sell it whenever I want. And then I can decide I'm going to take time off in this season and I'm feeling safe and secure that I can go back on the market and make money again. To me, that is wealth.
I love hearing that. And so many people could, you know, learn from doing that, because a lot of the times we hear about wealth and it's about like the number, and we don't realize to go past that and say, what does this number get us? And you're sharing that. I think the last thing I'd leave people with when it comes to tackling resistance for big business goals or getting that raise or that promotion or anything it is that's like, that seems too big and it's to do with money. Focus on your strengths. We'll just leave you with this. It's like, a lot of people will think about all the things that they can't do or trying to get really good at everything. I think that I've learned over time, like, I'm not really good at this thing, but what am I good at? That's the thing that's going to get you more higher paid.
Yes, absolutely. I would leave with money needs a purpose. So don't just focus on a number, decide how you're going to spend the money. So when we do our exercises thinking, if I had $40,000 a month, what would I do? The first reflection is like, I don't need that. That's greedy. Okay, well, what if for fun, right? What if you're able to hire a gardener, the best health specialist, somebody to help you cook delicious food? Look how many jobs you're creating. Look how many people get to share their talents because of you. So all of a sudden their perspective starts shifting. We say, how much you allocate for yourself? How much you want to allocate for projects that matter to you? So wealth and money need a purpose. Just setting 1 million for the sake of 1 million is not going to bring you joy. What are you going to do with that money? How is it going to help you?
I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
We learn how to save it, not spend it, right? We learn how to save it. We don't learn how to spend it. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for joining. To anyone listening to this, I look forward to our next session. I don't think we have a topic yet.
We will chat about it. I think I will see you backstage in just a second and we can talk about that.
Okay. See you guys next Thursday.
See you.